Okay, this is Visibility, taken from Stumbles and Half Slips, available now from Epic Rights Press. Okay. That was some session in the Green Man Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday onwards from noon and into Thursday really. 2 days off work sick and still a vestigial headache of boozy guilt lurking numbly at the back of my head in the middle of Friday morning. I can forget about it as long as I don't blink my eyes. When I do that, another brick gets dropped in the dark cellar in the middle of my brain. This doesn't do much to improve the appeal of some of the downright unpleasant places to where I have to deliver pallets. By 11, I'm at a timber yard near Edwinstone. Normally I quite like a run up to North Notts. It's nice being around Sherwood Forest. But today's cloudy and sticky and damp, and as I'm stood by my truck waiting for the forklift bloke to unload the pallets, it starts to rain. All the timber is stored under roofs and aluminium poles, kind of sideless sheds, the neat stacks of timber kept dry by tarpaulins that don't look thick enough to be genuinely protected. The thin coverings dapple and dent in the breeze, and the drizzle leaves a sheen on the cheap grey fabric. I shiver as the rain gets heavier. I can't get under any of the roofs because the stacks of timber protrude slightly from underneath them, and there's no space for me to huddle. I don't like sitting in my cab whilst the truck gets unloaded, because most forklift blokes try and talk to you, and it's difficult to maintain a conversation over the mechanical noise and the fact that they keep driving away from you. A lot of them are twats too, quite often incompetent or dangerous twats, and I don't like to distract them. As I guiltily edge over to by one of the roofs, seeking what little shelter a stooping corner can offer, today's forklift bloke keeps looking at me. Hard stares that flick away into fake concentrated glances at his steering wheel, hiding his disapproval in active work effort. I'm obviously getting on his nerves, and he clearly thinks he's important. Whether he's in charge here isn't clear. He's getting on my nerves too, only not as much as the rain. There's a porter cabin they've got set up as a reception area, done out like an office with a lass in a blue trouser suit sat behind a desk. The desk seemed quite solid and expensive, at least I could lean on it and sign the paperwork without it creaking and bending too much. There's carpet on the floor in there too, thick grey worthwhile carpet that can't have been cheap. I decide to head in there to get away from the rain and slip in when the forklift driver's engrossed in shifting a difficult and unsafe looking stack of pallets, dark eyes wobbling about under his shaved and patchy scalp. My feet on the steps of the porter cabin make the whole structure wobble, and I'm conscious of the lightweight fragility of the door as I close it behind me and have to force it shut against the breeze. Once inside, my boots leave chunky prints in the carpet. There's a coffee maker in the corner too, one of those American-style things with a big round pot sitting on top of the circular heater, giving off a delicious warm smell. Potted plants are dotted around, limp plastic leaves covered in a film of grey dust, and there's three comfortably upholstered easy chairs arranged in a carefully random semicircle facing the desk. All this comfort makes me wonder why they couldn't have brought some decent sheds for outside. Still, the coffee looks right nice, so I start looking for a cup, thinking they'll keep a stack of polystyrene ones about somewhere for the use of the workers and such like. The blonde lass in the blue trouser suit has got a Nottingham Forest FC mug to drink from, but I expect there's slightly cheaper alternatives for the likes of me. "Any chance of a coffee, Duck?" I ask, trying a big charming smile approach. "Do you work here?" she asks back, all beaky and officious, and trying to hold her head so that the sharp lines of her paper-straight blonde hair and its subtly expensive highlights can be seen. "I'm delivering here," I reply, again with a smile. "Well," she enlightens me, "that's not really working here, is it? That coffee's for employees only." "But I have got to wait here for a while." "I don't make the rules," she says, using a phrase that sits uncomfortably in her mouth, as though she's learnt it from someone else. I get the impression that this one's older than she looks, and resents the fact I haven't complimented her on appearance yet. "Okay, can I have a glass of water then?" "There aren't any cups. Sorry." She looks right at me and then nervously away, little manicured painted nails tapping at the mouse buttons of the grey computer on her desk. "I'll have to sit down then, out of the rain like." I park myself in one of the comfortably upholstered chairs and enjoy the relative luxury. She looks flustered as she flicks the mouse about the desk and then picks up a biro to tick some items off on a list. She tuts and shakes her head, but doesn't raise her gaze from the list and the desk. We sit in comfortable silence for a couple of minutes. I stare into space. She fusses and tuts and lists things, and then gets up and opens one of the windows whose glass looks too heavy for its frame. She sits again, flicking something from her valuable hair. Obviously irritated, she stands suddenly and opens one of the fragile windows. Then she sits and I can sense her hostile stare, but when I look up to meet it, her eyes are back on the lists and post-it notes, her immaculate nails tapping and pointing. The door thumps and rattles as a heavy-framed man in a fluorescent yellow, high-visibility vest and dirty working clothes barges through it with unnecessary force. As he looks at me and sweeps the sweat from his patchily haired head by dragging his forearm over his scalp, I recognise him as the forklift driver. He stands still for a moment and looks right at me. He's trying to look hostile, and I hold his stare unblinkingly because he looks like what he wants to fight me, and I don't particularly like that. He breaks the stare with a head shake and moves over to the desk. "Just getting a coffee, Debs," he tells the desk girl and reaches into one of the desk drawers. He pulls out a long stack of polystyrene drinking cups, wrapped in a sleeve of clear polythene. The forklift driver removes a cup from the stack and goes over to the coffee pot. He fills his cup and slurps about half the coffee down noisily, then tops up the cup with more from the pot. There's another drawer in the unit under the coffee maker, and he fumbles one-handed in this and pulls out sachets of sugar and little plastic pots of milk. He fumbles around with these for a bit until the harsh black coffee is his desired shade of creamy brown, and then he stumps out of the office, his heavy tread shaking the thin walls of the porter cabin. Once he's outside, I hear the rasp and click of a lighter and his massive sighing exhalation of a lungful of smoke. I go back to gazing into space until I hear his heel grind his nub end into the gravel and dirt outside. There's a splat too, as though he's thrown away at least half of his coffee on the ground. The building shakes again as he stamps up the steps. Just as he flings the fragile door open, a wasp lazily loops through the window the desk girl opened. It buzzes around, banging its head against the thin walls with a crunching noise out of all proportion to its size. "Excuse me," the forklift driver exclaims at me from the doorway. I look over. He doesn't give me an opportunity to say anything before he continues. "Excuse me, pal, but where's your high-vis vest?" "Your what?" I reply. "Your high-vis vest. Like this one here," he explains in the tone of voice dull-witted people use when they make the mistake of believing that they're the cleverest person in the room. "This one here," he repeats, slapping his chest with his palm for emphasis. "I know what they are, thanks, pal. Mine's in my cab," I tell him. "Don't think I'll need it in here." I laugh and try and smile at the desk girl, but she's keeping her eyes on her lists. "Are you not in a place of work?" the forklift man asks, now adding a decided smugness to his generally unpleasant tone. "Yeah." "Well, you should be properly equipped then." "I'm sat in a chair in a one-room office in a porter cabin, pal," I exclaim with a certain measure of genuine incredulity. "Is it not a place of work?" He's one of them that will just keep repeating himself until he gets the answer he wants, or say, "Yes." "Well, what would you do if someone walked through here with a cup of hot, scalding coffee?" He describes the coffee as though scalding was what it was designed for. "Move out of the way," I suggest. "But how would they know if you were in the way if they couldn't see you?" I'm stumped here. I make daft lip movements and shrug. I really can't think of an answer. "And why wouldn't they be able to see you?" he asks. I follow the wasp's awkwardly looping, buzzing flight as it bangs itself into the corners of the walls, and I kid myself that I know how it feels. I can't be bothered with any more of forklift man's daft questions, so I just shrug again. Helpfully, he provides me with an answer. "Because you wouldn't be correctly attired in the specific requisites of work clothing." He points right at me when he says clothing, as though it's a moral issue. He stares at me and holds his pointing stance like a man who's forever wanting a fight but never gets one. I watch the wasp, then forklift man shakes his head and leaves, trying to slam the flimsy door, but the wind blows it back and prevents it slamming, so he has to close it carefully. He looks resentfully at me as he does it, as though that's my fault too. I hear the taps of the girl's perfect little fingernails on her computer mouse. The wasp buzzes again. I look at the marks my boot soles made in the chunky grey carpet. The girl starts shrieking. The wasp is hovering around her head. Ah! Ah! She shrieks like someone's just grabbed her left tit and tweaked it. It's all right, Duck, it's only a wasp. Don't panic. I try and reassure her as I rise from the seat. She looks at me, her whole body held still like a statue of panic. Her expression simultaneously baffled, hateful, and absolutely terror-stricken. I smile, and she breaks her pose, shrieks again, and runs out of the hut, leaving the fragile, inadequate door flapping in the breeze. The wasp doesn't care and keeps buzzing around the edges of the room, moving from collision to collision with insect commitment. I pick up a sheet of paper from the girl's desk and reach into the bottom drawer and pull out the polythene-wrapped sleeve of polystyrene cups. I'll trap the wasp and then set it free outside, and then everyone's a winner, and these twats might actually think a bit more highly of me. I'm taking a cup off the top of the stack when the girl and forklift man come bursting through the door, making the office shake and vibrate with their frantic, heavy steps. "Just what's going on now?" Forklift man yells at me, arm protectively hovering over the girl's shoulder, as though he knows that he can't quite get away with touching her just yet. "Nothing, mate. He's going to get rid of this wasp for the lady here." I try and give him a matey grin, but he looks so angry and repulsive and actually jealous that it feels closer to a sneer. His eyes wobble with indignation beneath his patchy scalp as he yells, "Haven't you caused enough trouble? Now you're nicking cups and deliberately making wasps angry and scaring young ladies." "I've had enough now. Look, mate," I point out to him, "if you spent more time out there unloading my sodding truck than you do in here leching over her, then I'd be long gone. Do you think I like being here in this shithole? Now get out of there and get your job done so that I can piss off pronto." And she's not that young, by the way, but still too young for you. I put the cups back in the drawer and walk up to where he's standing in the doorway. He moves to one side, but not to ease my exit. Instead, he grabs both my shoulders and steers me wordlessly out through the door, and then gives me a shove down the tiny flight of steps like I'm a drunk being thrown out of a small-town hotel bar. I shake him loose and have to jog away from him to free his grip. "Where's my truck?" I shout. His eyes wobble so much I can almost hear them squeak, and he points with an angular wave of his arm at where my truck is parked up against one of the roofs on poles. He has obviously finished unloading the pallets, so I stride over to the truck and climb up into the cab. I decide to take out my anger in exaggerated steering wheel revolutions and gear crunches. It's a good job. I don't know what he's done to my vehicle whilst I've been inside, but it's right up on the edge of the track, boxed in by the storage shed and a grass verge with an even slope that exaggerates the difficult camber of the track. I'm turning the wheel and toggling through gears and pressing foot pedals with minimal effect, all the time aware of the harsh, unyielding glares of forklift man and his tearful companion. It takes me ages to finally manoeuvre my way out, and there's a real sweet relief in me as I'm able to open the engine out and finally get clear. I risk a look in the rearview mirror and see that forklift man's made a breakthrough. The girl has her blonde head on his shoulder, and he's stroking her and kissing her with staccato pecks. They shrink amongst the trees as I pull further away, and I can't help feeling a little guilty. "She'll regret letting that bastard touch you, I'm sure."